I'm Turk Strongman. This is part 2 of my introduction to my playlist here on my channel. My playlist called The KYBALION, my narration of the book by 3 Intitiates called The KYBALION. This introduction also is my introduction to the series of videos that comprise that playlist. Okay, where that playlist is actually my narration of the book. At the end of my initial introductory video to this series and to this playlist in which this series exists, at the end of it I said the next video will commence with either chapter 1 of the text of the book or the introduction that is in the book prior to the actual chapter 1. However, this is a continuation of my introduction, not the book's introduction, but my introduction to this playlist and to this narrative series. I want to state my point of view and some accepted facts about the book. Well, one fact that's undeniable about the book is its popularity. I mentioned that in part 1 here of this introduction. That is my own introduction to the whole thing. It's popular. It's popular. There's even a movie out having something to do with the KYBALION. I think it's called The KYBALION, but I'm not sure. But there is a film, a motion picture out about it, or involving it somehow. I haven't looked at it. I don't think I will. Now, my opinion. I think that the book's popularity is the product of a lot of marketing. I don't know how else to account for its popularity. I don't know. All right, moving on. There are some misunderstandings about this book and its content. First of all, now here's somewhat of an enigma about the book. Also, the book is a book of aphorisms. Explained. The aphorisms are very brief, or the axioms, the maxims, and they are presented as direct quotes from the KYBALION. But what is the KYBALION? It's this book. I haven't found any ancient text called the KYBALION. I could be wrong about this. See, here's my opinion, my observation. And if I'm correct, that makes this book a little bit on the fanciful side, a self-marketing, on the self-marketing side. Something that, a book that purports to bring forth to the modern mind, to the postmodern mind, to current society, to the current public, something, that harks right back directly to some book called the KYBALION, or some slate or carved in stone, something called the KYBALION long ago. To the best of my knowledge, though, there is no such thing. So what's it quoting from? What is this book quoting from with these maxims, these axioms, these aphorisms, these supposedly direct quotes? Here's the first one in the book is, here I have the text of the book. The very first sentence in the very first chapter, called The Hermetic Philosophy: the lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. That's in quotes. And then dash dash, the KYBALION. Like, that's the source. That's a direct quote from the KYBALION. But if you look through this book, which is called the KYBALION, that quote's not in here. It doesn't exist, except as a quote, in quotes, from the KYBALION. So you look in the rest of the KYBALION here, and it's not there. So where is it? To the best of my knowledge, that's where it is, right there. That's it. That is it. That is it. Right there. It might as well have not been put in quotes, and it might as well have been written there as a sentence, like the first sentence of the chapter. That's it. Just with no reference to something called the KYBALION, because this is the KYBALION. All right. Now, the book has to do with 7 Hermetic principles. Each principle is explained, but it is named, it is identified, first and foremost, as a quote from the KYBALION. Just like that first one that I just read here. Here's the beginning of chapter 1. The chapter on the principle of mentalism. Sorry, not chapter 1, but chapter 2, those 7 Hermetic principles. The first principle, the all is mind, the universe is mental. That's a quote attributed to the KYBALION. But again, to the best of my knowledge, this is the KYBALION. So what's a quote from the KYBALION doing in the KYBALION? When I don't find that quote here in the KYBALION, the actual one, I only find it in quotation marks referring to the KYBALION, which is this book, and that's the only place I see that sentence. There's something phony here about the nature of the book and what it purports to be. Something a little hokey with respect to marketing strategy built into the text of the book. Maybe not intentionally of the marketing strategy thing, but something that gives the reader the idea that they are accessing, or that he or she is accessing, some bringing forth of some ancient text. Like as if the 3 initiates, the identity of which the only one really known is William Walker Atkinson himself. Why did he do this? Why did he write this way? Was he trying to pull over on people? All right, moving on. This purports to give us insight into some secret doctrine, some arcane teaching, cutting to the chase, narrowing it all down, some ancient Hermetic ideology from ancient Greece and even more so ancient Egypt. But here, let's take a look at Wikipedia, and I fall in step with what this says. All right, let's just take a look at something. At whether this actually does align with traditional Hermetic ideology, ancient and medieval alike. I'm just going to read you the KYBALION entry in Wikipedia. The KYBALION. Full title being The KYBALION, A Study of the Hermetic Philosophy of Ancient Egypt and Greece, is a book originally published in 1908 by 3 initiates, often identified as the New Thought pioneer William Walker Atkinson, 1862 to 1932, that purports to convey the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus. purports. Purports means proclaims itself to do such and so, or claims to. Not does, but claims to. Whether it does or doesn't is not identified with that word purports, but it doesn't mean does do. It means claims to. And the book itself does claim to do that. Continuing. While it shares with ancient and medieval Hermetic texts a number of traits such as philosophical mentalism, the concept of as above, so below, and the idea that everything consists of gendered polar opposites. As a whole, it is more indebted to the ideas of modern occult authors, especially those of the New Thought movement to which Atkinson belonged. A modern Hermetic tract, it has been widely influential in New Age circles since the 20th century. And therein lies its popularity. That's my addition to what I just read you. Now, the 7 Hermetic principles are the principle of mentalism, the principle of correspondence, the principle of vibration, the principle of polarity, the principle of rhythm, the principle of cause and effect, and the principle of gender. Now, relation to ancient and medieval Hermetica. According to Mitch Horowitz, the philosophical mentalism, that first of the 3 traits shared with ancient and medieval Hermetic texts. Philosophical mentalism, in other words, the primacy of mind as the active cause of things, described by the KYBALION's first principle, was inspired by broadly similar notions in the ancient Greek Hermetica, an actual text. Nicholas E. Chappell notes that while several aspects, such as the philosophical mentalism, the concept of as above, so below, as derived from the emerald tablet attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, and the idea that everything exists as pairs of gendered polar opposites, those being those 3 traits that hark back, do have a background in ancient and medieval Hermetic texts. Other aspects in the KYBALION, such as the principle of vibration, which originates in the philosophy of David Hartley, 1705 to 1757, are not related to Hermeticism. Not related. Chappell also points out that there are a number of stark contrasts between the KYBALION and the traditional Hermetica, such as the KYBALION's anti-theological stance versus the heavy emphasis on theology in the Hermetica, or the KYBALION's focus on the practitioner's mental transmutation versus the Hermetica's preoccupation with reverence for and unification with the divine. Chappell concludes that as a whole, the KYBALION is too bound up with early 20th century ideas emanating from the New Thought movement to be representative of the broader historical tradition of Hermetic philosophy. And I agree. While there may be valuable insight in this book, the KYBALION, its references to antiquity, direct references and quotes attributed to antiquity, and its emphasis on humanism versus the divine, make it as, in a sense, phony as the quotes from the KYBALION, which is this book itself, and the name Three Initiates, which may have just been one person, William Walker Atkinson. I don't think it deserves the popularity that it has. I think that those who believe it to be some kind of sacred thing, or who make a movie out of it, or present it as some kind of gospel, in a sense, some kind of bringing to the modern public something laid down in ancient Egypt, just like it is here. And this is, like really elucidating what was said then, what was believed then, is a hoax. It's a confabulation. And the people who fall for it just haven't looked into it enough, or they wanted to believe. In the manner of the way a lot of New Age buffoonery strikes many people. They either recognize it to have an extent of buffoonery involved, or they swallow it hook, line, and sinker. I said that if you really want something of much more notable literary status and informative genuineness, written by William Walker Atkinson, I said this in part one of this dual video introduction to the series here and to this playlist. Refer to the Arcane Teaching, written by William Walker Atkinson, which he openly admits to have written. And then, for the usefulness of the teaching, to the follow-up, Arcane Formulas, also written by him. Now, there you have it. But I'm going to go ahead and narrate this book, because it's so popular. And honestly, also, just directly, honestly, folks, also because I think I'm pretty good at narrating such material. And I have yet to find any narration. Now, I haven't seen them all. There are way too many for me to review them all before doing this. But I have heard computer-generated voice, which is boring as hell. And I have heard human voice, many being very, very good, but somewhat monotone. And I get the idea. I get it, why to narrate books rather flatly, with a rather flat voice, an unmodulated voice. I get it. It's not my method. I think the reasons why people do it are, number one, because they would feel like, the narrators would feel that they're being a little phony if they were to modulate their voice, modulate their tone, modulate their inflection, modulate their volume, as if they were genuinely conversing with somebody, as though, this were actually coming out of their own minds at the time. They feel like maybe their, so to speak, acting skill in it would come across as non-genuine or disgenuine. And number two, perhaps moreover, well, I'll make three, because that's just the way other people do it. So why not follow suit? Like, that's the way you do this. That's the way you make audiobooks. You just deliver them with a monotone. and now number three, which is going to be my number two, because there's this idea that what you're doing when you narrate and create an audio book is you present the written text in listenable form. So give it to the listener the way it would be given to a reader, which is written text, type, print, font. All the letters being of the same font, of the same size, no directions for emphasis, no highlights, no, here you say it a little louder, here you read it a little louder in your mind, here you give emphasis, here you raise your tone in your mind as you're reading. In other words, no stage directions. So, as you narrate it for somebody else to listen to as though they were reading it, then just give it to them like it's printed, flat. Well, that's not my method. And I happen to think, and so do a lot of other people, that my method, which is pretty much just the way I'm talking to you right here in this video, comes across with more meaning, more purpose, more genuineness, pausing at the right time, given the punctuation if it's punctuated correctly, if the text is punctuated correctly, to get the real meaning across more accurately to the listener. Well, I haven't found anybody to do that yet with this book, although many such may exist. I just haven't found them. So I'm going to go ahead and do it my way. And hopefully it will have some significance to you. Additional significance to you. That way, then you will find in other narrations, hundreds of them, elsewhere. That's the only reason why I'm doing this. And is by popular request, of course, which I said several times in part 1 of this introduction to the series. Of course, popular request. Have you now? Are you going to narrate the KYBALION? Would you do that? I said no for a long time. Now I say yeah, sure, go ahead. Go ahead, Turkstrom, and do it. Please the popular mind. Besides, gives me something to do. I guess you could say that I don't hold the book in really high regard. And now you know why. If you want to know my opinion about it, now you do. Some people, for some reasons or other, take my opinion about such matters to have an air of authority about it. So, hopefully, here, if you are of that belief about my opinion, well, hopefully I haven't disappointed you here. Now, on with the show.